What the West forgot. A road we drive every week, a room we have lived in for years, a space we think we already understand, a story we heard so many times that it became shape before it remained feeling. Familiarity can become a kind of blindness, not because the thing has become empty, but because we have learned to pass over it without asking anything new. We name it, and the name becomes a door we never open. The same thing can happen with images. A picture can become familiar before it has been seen. The mind reaches ahead of the eye. It finds the category, hangs a label on it, and moves on. Western imagery is especially vulnerable to this. Cowboy, horse, gunfighter, frontier town, dust, hat, boots, saloon, open country, sunset. We know these words, we know these shapes. We know the myth before we meet the image. And sometimes the myth arrives so loudly that the human being inside it disappears. That may be part of what the West forgot. Not the history alone, not the costume, not the landscape, not the symbols, the person beneath them. When symbols stop breathing. The West did not become powerful in the imagination because it was simple. It became powerful because it held contradiction. It carried danger and hope, violence and beauty, labor and loneliness, migration and loss, reinvention and erasure, freedom and consequence. But over time, repeated images can harden into shorthand. The cowboy becomes courage. The gun becomes danger. The horse becomes freedom. The frontier town becomes nostalgia. The open land becomes escape. Each of those readings may contain some truth, but none of them are enough. When an image becomes only a symbol, it stops breathing. It may still be handsome, it may still be dramatic, it may still decorate a wall. But the deeper human uncertainty has slipped away. The viewer is no longer asked to wonder. They are asked only to recognize. Seeing asks more than recognition. Beyond the first language. To truly see a Western image, we may have to step past the first language we were given, past the poster, past the movie still, past the campfire version, past the decorative idea of the West as rugged, heroic, nostalgic, or cleanly resolved. The deeper image often begins where the familiar one ends. A cowboy is not only a cowboy. He may be tired, cornered, proud, foolish, afraid, guilty, homesick, performing toughness because the world has left him no softer language. A woman in a frontier room is not only period atmosphere. She may be waiting out a silence no one else knows how to break. She may be measuring the cost of a decision already made. She may be the only person in the scene who understands what is really happening. A native figure is not only a historical reference, a symbol of loss, or a visual marker of the Old West. He or she is a person in a moment, carrying presence, dignity, history, suspicion, endurance, grief, humor, resistance, memory, and a life beyond the frame. A horse is not only movement. It may be escape, work, wealth, survival, burden, companionship, a way out, a way back, a witness. A frontier street is not only a setting. It may be a stage where everyone is watching everyone else, a place where reputation moves faster than truth, a place where a door, a window, a shadow, or an empty chair can hold more tension than a drawn gun. The West remembered the icons. It sometimes forgot the unanswered questions inside them. Where story begins. That forgetting did not happen all at once. It happened through repetition, through easy images, through stories polished until the rough parts no longer cut, through a hunger for heroes simple enough to admire and villains simple enough to dismiss. But human beings are rarely that simple. The real force of Western art does not come from hats, horses, weapons, or weathered wood by themselves. Those are materials. They become meaningful only when they carry pressure. Pressure is where story begins. A figure alone in open country may not be about solitude until the space feels like it is asking something of him. A man with a gun may not be about violence until the image makes us wonder whether he wants to use it, fears he will, or already has. A quiet room may not be about peace. It may be about what was just said, what cannot be said, or what everyone is pretending not to know. A road may not be about travel. It may be about leaving something behind that will not stay behind. This is why the unresolved Western image matters. It gives the myth back its human uncertainty. The old symbols do not need to be destroyed. They need to be opened. The cowboy, the rider, the town, the trail, the door, the landscape, the gun, the horse, the camp, the weather. Each can become more than a sign of the West. Each can become a question. And questions last longer than declarations. A declaration tells the viewer what to think. A question gives the viewer somewhere to stand. Testing the myth. This is where cinematic Western art and narrative Western photography can restore something valuable. Not by making the West bigger, louder, or more spectacular, but by making it more human again. A cinematic Western image does not have to explain the whole scene. It can hold a pause. It can let light divide the room. It can leave a figure half-turned. It can suggest a conversation that ended badly, a decision that has not yet found its courage, or a history pressing quietly against the present moment. The image becomes less interested in proving the myth and more interested in testing it. What does courage look like when no one is watching? What does guilt look like when it has learned to stand still? What does survival cost when the story keeps calling it freedom? What did the legend leave out so the legend could remain clean? These are not questions the image has to answer. It is enough that it knows how to ask. The West did not forget because the subjects vanished. They are everywhere. The West is still painted, photographed, filmed, collected, worn, branded, remembered, and sold. It forgot when those subjects became too easy, too finished, too clean, too certain, too quickly understood. The work of seeing is to make them difficult again in the right way. Not obscure, not cynical, not stripped of beauty. Difficult because people are difficult. Difficult because history is not a costume. Difficult because memory is not the same thing as truth. Difficult because a beautiful image can still carry unease. Difficult because admiration without attention becomes another form of forgetting. Human weather. To see the West again is to slow the myth down until a person reappears. A hand on a doorframe, eyes turned away from the light. A rider pausing before the road commits him. A room holding its breath. A town pretending not to watch. A face that has learned how to survive being misunderstood. These are small things. But small things are often where the human story returns. The West does not need to be emptied of myth. Myth is part of its power. The danger is not myth itself. The danger is myth without consequence, myth without grief, myth without humor, myth without doubt, myth without ordinary human weather. When myth loses its human weather, it becomes decoration. When the human weather returns, the image begins to breathe again. That is what the West forgot. Not how to look dramatic, not how to look rugged, not how to look beautiful. It forgot at times how to remain unfinished enough for the human being to enter. Closing thought. And perhaps we forget the same thing in life. We turn people into roles because roles are easier than presence. We turn stories into conclusions because conclusions are easier than attention. We decide what something means before it has had time to speak. Seeing asks us to do otherwise, to pause before the familiar, to distrust the first label, to let a figure remain more than a type, to let a scene remain more than a theme, to let the past remain human, unresolved, and near. The West was never only a place. It was a pressure field of lives moving through danger, hope, mistake, beauty, violence, labor, performance, survival, and memory. If an image can return us to that pressure, even for a moment, then it has given something back. It has reminded us that the icon was never the ending. It was the doorway. And beyond the doorway, someone is still there, waiting to be seen.